questions than our answers. I have one question. Where did he go?
I think out to the children.
No, that's okay. They'll be okay. You know, the more fuss we make, you know, the more.
Yeah, oxygen of attention.
And they're very young. They're only the kids. They're not.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. Still, you know, they were still insensitive to the
When's the
flowers.
rain when you need it? If the rain fell, it could go.
Just to remind you then of some of the things in chapter 9 that we've been dealing with. And don't forget, chapter 9 is designed to show us a variety of glories which are there, which help the aspirant to pick up some threads and lead the mind progressively toward its blissful base, namely the divine. And so this Raja Vidya, Raja Guhya Yoga is being elucidated in terms of how can we orientate the heart toward a personal God. This is emphasized because this is, as we know, one of the easiest routes that we have toward the highest. And so last week we dealt with the idea that ritualistic worship need not be very elaborate. It can be very simple. A single leaf, a single flower, and a fruit or water. These are things, but these are external things which are tokens. They wouldn't be satisfactory in human relations. Imagine going to your nearest and dearest, happy birthday, here's a leaf. I don't think they'd be very happy. Or here's one flower. Then I expect a bouquet. Or here's a cup of water, happy birthday. I think you'll probably get into some difficulties like that. But why do we think that the Lord will be offended or otherwise by these offerings? Why do we have to make any extra ritualistic action? It's really to orientate the mind toward a meditative attitude. That's all. And it's the most expressive thing when the hand and the heart and the mind are all conjoined to ritualistic worship. But the main thing is the sincerity. Prayers and ritualistic offerings can be extremely superficial, with not much depth to them. And in every religion we have this sometimes mechanical recitation of prayers and mechanical actions. If you ask, as we discussed a little earlier, why you are lighting a lamp, it may be my mother did it and her mother did it, and so it goes on. Some kind of tradition may be there. And so the important thing is not what you're offering, but what is acceptable. And so it goes like this, just to remind you, Putram Pushpam Param Toyam Yo Me Bhaktya Prayachati Tadaham Bhaktya Upartam Ashnami Prayatatmanaha. Whoever offers me, Patram, a small leaf, and we discussed last week the various levels of understandings of this, because leaf would represent life. And but the main thing is this, not just offer it, but bhaktya, with devotion, with an inner feeling, with sincerity. I picked this book up because when I thought of this particular passage, I thought this is great saint, Saint Teresa of Lisieux. Otherwise, other people called her the little flower. And instead of offering literally a flower, she offered all the minor things and activities and thoughts. There's one example from her life. All the nuns, she was a nun, they were congregated in one area. And naturally, everybody wants a little peace. So here, trying to meditate, and some children may be playing outside, and it can maybe create a reaction in us. And in her case, there was a nun who had a habit of shuffling. Maybe we can add to the drama and say maybe coughing a little bit. Every time she sat, close the eyes, now, me and the Lord, now, let us see, and then cough, cough, like that. And a little shuffling. We'll try again, right, like this. Then she realized, a thought came to her. She registered the internal reaction and then said, Lord, this annoyance I'll offer to you as my little flower. So all the time she offered these little things as small flowers, small tokens to her beloved. And then of course there wasn't a distraction anymore. Of course the distraction is when the person doesn't shuffle and cough. And you think, oh, no offering today. So the point is that if we have this deep devotional relationship with our most beloved, will we not take every single thing we can think of, internally and externally? Here's reference to external, but the internal dimension of it is the sincerity of the heart. That is why a simple offering will do. It's not the actual offering, it's the sincerity and love with which it is offered. And that means that we don't have to involve ourselves in what could be a distraction, and that is overly elaborate rituals and costly things, with the excuse, I can't afford the offering. It reminds me of Sri Ramakrishna's story actually, about the man who held this great, I think it was Duru Puja or something like that, every year. But in his old age he ceased to do it, and people asked, you used to create this huge feast for us and this wonderful puja and so on. You don't do it, you don't sponsor it anymore, with all this beautiful food that came from everywhere. We look forward to this festival every year. And then he pointed to his mouth, which had no teeth, and said, alas, you see, no teeth. So, what are we doing this for? There has to be some mindfulness behind all of this. And this is why religion today may not be as appealing as time goes on, because the younger generation, and even the older generation for that matter, may not fully understand, why are we doing this? We're doing this out of habit, doing it out of tradition. Is that good enough? So whoever, regardless whether you're rich, whether you're poor, offers me, the Lord of the universe, with devotion, that's the key, a leaf, a flower, or a fruit, or water. And so fruit, the fruit of my actions it can also be. This is karma yoga, after all. Karma bhakti combined. Lord, I do all these actions, and all their effects I offer to you with a sense of love. And here's the key, offering. Why or how this prayata atmanaha, with or by the pure-minded, that is those with a pure heart. That is those with no extra curriculum, no extra motivation, nothing extra in mind. And very often in religion you have this bargaining process. See, my knee hurts, but if I say a certain prayer to you, or offer you some payasam or something every day for, let's say, 40 days, here's a bargain, you see, then I'll get cured, won't I? Maybe. And then of course after 40 days nothing happens. It's a waste of time every day. Went to all this trouble making this pudding and offering it and so on with the appropriate mantras, nothing happened. Of course if the right thought movement is there, then something will happen, there's no doubt. And that's where some faith has to be there, and a purity of heart means purity of intention. I'm doing this not to get anything, just because I love you. And why should we love God? Because God is lovable. When we investigate what God is, we find the supplier of free air, free sunshine, all the free resources that we require to live. All the cells of the body are so biologically intricate and complex. Some aspects of them have even been described as subject to irreducible complexity. Darwin stated in his Origin of the Species, if there is ever some cell, some mechanism, something within the organic life where we cannot find a progressive series of functional changes, then I'll have to abandon this theory of mine. And there are some cells which are so intricate and complete that are obviously there, each one for its own function, all coordinated. And we take it for granted because we don't see the mechanisms happening. And so God has given us a way of just getting on with our business, and He'll take care of the rest. He'll digest your food, He'll repair the cells, He'll give you pocket money for silly thinking. And while you're sleeping, carry on with it, he alone remaining awake. So, this book is very interesting. It's a book called The Story of a Soul. And even in the very first start of it, she says, before setting about my task means she was asked to write her memoirs and biography by her superior, by the abbess. So I knelt before the statue of Our Lady, which has given us so many proofs of our Heavenly Mother's loving care. As I knelt, I begged of that dear Mother to guide my hand and to ensure that only what was pleasing to her should find place here. A total reliance, even on task that is given, complete reliance on the divine. That means we don't have to make any decisions of our own, in difficult circumstances so-called, and we weigh up this option and that option. Well, relax, let go, see what automatically comes to you, what comes to you naturally, unasked. Asked, it will come. But if unasked and it comes, what a blessing. As if God's saying, here's some opportunities. It could be many different things. A job opportunity, a scholarship, etc. All of these things can arrive unasked. Same thing. Supposing I have a vision, some kind of inspiration that I'll set up an art gallery to supply culture to everybody. Then, if somebody gives me a piece of land, then won't artists come with their pictures free of charge, saying, we'll contribute to the public good? Won't there be a suitable architect to design such a building? Won't things come by themselves? What did we do here? Same thing. I started off with a thought, an intention, with a certain confidence that this idea came from the divine. And therefore the divine will do the rest. And we can see how easily and naturally it came within a few years. Well, God does the rest. Our portion is very small. We simply use our God-given thoughts, our God-given capacity to send an intention out with the confidence it will never be neutralized, since the Supreme Thinker is the Lord Himself. So she goes on like that. Our Lord has granted to my soul, He does not call those who are worthy, but those whom He will. We don't have to qualify in order to get this divine grace. And she quotes St. Paul, as St. Paul says, God will have mercy on whom He will have mercy. So, then it is not of him that willeth, nor of him that runneth, but of God that showeth mercy. It's all up to Him. What is our part? Polishing, cleaning the mind, making the mind in such a condition that we can, with a purity of heart, sincerely offer even these tokens, but the internal dimension we can offer too. And we find this in our next passage. She says, I often ask myself why God has preferences. And this will come out again. Why all souls do not receive an equal measure of grace, she asks. I was filled with wonder when I saw extraordinary favors showered on sinners, that is imperfect people, such as St. Paul, St. Augustine, St. Mary Magdalene, and many others, whom He forced, so to speak, to receive His grace. So later on we find that the Lord bestows His grace even on those who have led a very bad life. Still, if their intention is pure, if their resolve is solid, then He grants the freedom as He would anybody. He's not a judging, criticizing entity, as some religions might portray. So just to remind you of that. Then what should the devotee do then is a good question. So the Lord tells this. And we covered this also, but we're just repeating this because having offered something that is external, we now have to see, can I offer myself? Just as this Teresa offers as small tokens and flowers, little small things, small alloyances, not big bouquets, small things. It's the small things that irritate. You know, it's the key to abrasion in nature. Abrasion occurs with small grains of sand, repeatedly rubbed, and then we find the effect. Yat karoshi yat ashnasi, yat joshi dadasi yat. Yat tapasyasa kontaya, tat kurusa mad arpanam. Whatever you do, what does that mean? Whatever, it literally means whatever. Now if we review what our daily activities are. We wake up in the morning, is that not an activity? Somebody once joked, you see, I had to open my eyes this morning. The man who normally does it was on holiday. No, we open the eyes. We can think of it like this. The Lord taps us, come on my child, time to get up. Come, we have an appointment. We have an appointment in the morning. It's called meditation. So from waking up to getting up, to brushing the teeth, to bathing and so on, all of these are activities. And during these activities, because we don't have to dedicate all our attention necessary to them, the mind is left free. And we can insert loving thoughts in that case. On the basis that I originally began, that we love God because God is lovable. Lovable means we are grateful. See Joel Goldsmith's beautiful passage that I often repeat from his book, Art of Meditation. He says, what is meditation? A song of gratitude, he says, that God is here, God is now, God is love. Supposing we were to sing this song of gratitude at every moment of the day, using every second, using it joyfully with an alternative, we could use it in a complaining way. We could use it in a negative way. What a pity. We would take off the what a pity and substitute what a glory, what a glory. Can we not see it everywhere? How the body will thrill with it. How the face will shine with it. Whatever you do, then it becomes much more specific. Whatever you eat becomes your physical body. You don't think of it like that. But this body is yesterday's, I was going to say pasta, but that might be read differently. So yesterday's food, whatever yesterday's food was, is today's body. And so intrinsically, when you offer whatever you eat, you're intrinsically offering the physical self. Whatever you offer in sacrifice, there are two ways of doing sacrifice. We can do it with an egoistic attitude, a kind of boastful attitude, or a genuine sense of let me give, let it go. And so, therefore, more specifically, whatever you gift away, whatever austerity you practice, austerity, see, tapasya means the thing that develops a strength of will. And even in practicing austerity, we could do it not as an offering. We could do it as, I need to do this because I need to achieve something in spiritual life. A kind of egoistic way of doing spiritual practice and self-discipline. But then you see there's no generosity of spirit with it. It's purely an egocentric activity that is there for your own benefit. So whatever austerity you practice, do it. How and why? As an offering to me. So whenever we forget that, it's useful to remind ourselves of this beautiful passage, that whatever we do, if we do it with great, great diligence, make it a suitable offering, then we can offer it to the Lord. And this itself brings us closer to this divine. Sri Ramakrishna says this, O Mother, I am an instrument. You are its manipulator. I am the house, you are the resident. I am the chariot and you the charioteer. I move as you make me move. I speak as you direct. My doings are all your doings, not I, but you. Replacing all these activities. When we have a difficult decision to make, try and take the least egocentric position. Try and assess, what should I do for the overall benefit, the all-inclusive benefit of all? And all is a very wide term. So generosity of spirit that doesn't go, that goes beyond our familiar borders. can be a world mover. See how Nivedita was encouraged by Swami Purnananda to be a world mover. Not that anything has to be corrected, because that would be not the right attitude. When we offer it, it's not because we think God needs a flower or a shirt or something like that. No. Nor does God need our prayers or our offerings in any way. It's all from our point of view. How can we develop a tuning? So the good that accrues from surrendering everything to God is reckoned in the next passage. Thus shall you be free from the bondage of actions yielding good and bad results. This we need to explore, why we do things normally for good or bad results. With the mind firmly set in yoga of renunciation and liberated, you shall come to me. This requires some commentary. So it goes like this. Shubhas shubha pale evam mokshase karma bandhanai samnyasa yoga yuktatma vimukto mam upaishyasi. From good and evil fruits. See? Shubha, ashubha, pale. Shubha, good, ashubha, bad. Now when we do any actions or any thoughts, our moral compass tends to categorize things into virtue, vice, good and bad, make these sortings. Some of it is objective and some of it is subjective. So in sorting out all these moral issues and decisions, we haven't really gotten the point. The only reason why we should encourage doing the good is in order to prepare ourselves to transcend both good and evil. So, bondage is created both by good and evil results. But with the mind firstly firmly set, the difference of attitude that frees us, firmly set in what? In sannyas, the yoga of renunciation. We often think that this term sannyasa or sannyasa yoga means going off into a monastery or something like that, or a nunnery, something like that. No, that is not what is meant throughout the whole of the Gita. It is not what is meant. It means renouncing the fruits of all your actions. Having a detached attitude described previously by Sri Ramakrishna. It's not me, not I, but you. This is your body. I am your instrument. See that beautiful prayer of Francis of Assisi. Make me an instrument of your peace. Where there is hatred, let me sow love. Let me be of overall generous use to everybody. Let me have no understanding or no registration. This is my body, my mind, my career, my bank account, my building, my family. That will give you bondage. You're a slave to all of that. How do you get the mastery of it? How do you overcome this? How do you cut the bonds for freedom's sake? So you shall be free from all this bondage, of all his actions, yielding both good and bad results, both. And with the mind firmly set in yoga of a re-registration of ownership, and free, then you shall come to me. Sri Ramakrishna has this to say. What should you do when you are in this world? You should dedicate your everything to Ishvara, to God, however you conceive of God. You take refuge in Him, then you will have no misery whatsoever. You will forthwith get to the Lord. This itself requires some commentary. So we are in this world, we have no choice about it, and the world means an environment of people and places and events all around us, and circumstances sometimes in our favor, or seem to be, and sometimes not. Ups and downs. We were discussing earlier, bitter and sweet fruits of life. Reminded, of course, of that story in the Mundaka Upanishad of the two birds on the tree. One standing there in perfection, radiating bliss, and the other seeking that bliss, seeking that calmness, not by aspiring toward it, but thinking that it's there in this world of good and bad, or sweet and sour fruits, sweet and bitter fruits. And of course I was reminded of, this is the season when the blackberries come out, although I haven't seen any. And it's a kind of what we call Hobson's choice. So you'll get something that looks nice and sweet, you'll pick it, and oh, it tastes very different. And you develop a face like a gargoyle or something, and you say, okay, and you don't stop, because you don't assume that all the fruits are like that. So you go for another one, and that happens to be sweet. Ah, they're all sweet, say you. But it's trial and error, and the next one is not so sweet. Now in life, of course, the most bitter fruit that we can have is bereavement. And Arjuna himself is suffering from this, from a potential bereavement, seeing that there will be carnage on the battlefield. And the carnage will have no discrimination, it will be on both sides. And seeing that, particularly towards his grandsire, his teacher, Bhishma, Drona, etc., all the people that he loves and admires, and they have chosen to do their duty by playing their role on the other side. In those days, the battle was something like a chess game, with rules and regulations, with the castle in the chess game being the elephant corps, and the horses, the cavalry, and so on, and the bishop maybe are the Brahmins, the generals, or not exactly, somebody like Drona perhaps, or Bhishma. And then we find that there is, you notice the king doesn't go anywhere, just one square at a time. If you know the game of chess, you know what I'm talking about. The queen can go everywhere. See, the Lord of the universe, dressed up as energy, can go anywhere, and does go anywhere, and appears itself as this universe. This is Shakti. But the bitterest thing is this death and this bereavement. Any loss we grieve over. We desire something, we didn't get it. This is a kind of mini bereavement. But the maxi bereavement will be somebody we love is no longer. The body is gone. And so, these are the bitter and sweet fruits of life that come as fruits. And so, this is the world that we are involved in. So if we want to get out of that, then, says Sri Ramakrishna, you should dedicate your everything. There's no compromise here. Everything to Ishvara. That is the ownership of the body, ownership of the mind, supposed ownership of all the goods and chattels and so on and so forth, that kind of thing. It doesn't mean to say give them all away. It means understand the real ownership of these things is not you. You never created them. You only used them. You're using the body. It's for your use and for your benefit. Why? So that through this instrument you yourself may get this freedom, this peace that passeth the understanding. So the way of the world is to commingle with those drawn together and to be indifferent to others. That's the way. I eat food, then I feed myself, give the crumbs to others. But a selfless attitude is, feed others and I'll take the crumbs, whatever's left over. Is not Ishvara also behaving like the worldly? Many religions will say yes. But his real position has to be explained. Is he not a jealous and punishing God? When we offer something, does he say, no, I don't like this, I don't like peppers, or I don't like this, or I don't like that. Please take it back. Or being displeased. Sometimes people define this English word sin as offending God. And then you wonder that it doesn't sound very, even theologically sound, that a God can be offended, can take offense or give offense. And there are many, many arguments today with dualistic adherence to religion, with the idea that there is an extra cosmic God that watches you all the time and punishes you, or rewards you, mainly punishing. And so you derive some fear from it. And this whole thing of being afraid of sin. But you see, that's not love. Swami Vivekananda defines love as a triad. Three components are there. Real love will have an absence of rewards, an absence of rivals, and an absence of fear. And any religion, really, that encourages a fear is really contrary to a God of love. You can't have the two. I love you, my child. And you have to believe in me and do as I command. I love you so much. You are my child. But if you disobey me, then you'll roast forever on the barbecue of hell. And be tortured, and there'll be much gnashing. And the medieval authors are replete in their wonderful descriptions of what will happen in that place. Huh?
Medieval paintings.
Yes.
You really see it.
Yes. And Dante's hell, where actually even the Pope resides, in his view. They had a disagreement, an argument, so he put in his picture in hell. So, we have to clarify this and say, is this God the same as us? Is this just a glorified human that has our same human characteristics? Don't forget, the pantheon of Greek gods had their love affairs and were no more than superhumans, living in a different realm, that's all. And so soon they came out of favor. Whereas the Vedic pantheon was absorbed because they were not brought down to the human level as a supreme principle. And when they were brought to a human level, of course, they were all demoted. Samoham sarva bhuteshu na me dveshosti na priyaha. Ye bhajanti tu mam bhaktya mayite teshucha pyaham. I am the same to all beings. No preferences, no judgment, no criticism. To me, he says, there is none hateful, none dear. You might think not even anybody dear. No, a neutral attitude. Just like the sun beams its glorious rays on all, it doesn't judge anybody. Simply supplies. Otherwise, you see, even a person who murdered somebody and is hanging there on the gallows or about to hang on the gallows, the Lord doesn't withdraw his life energy, doesn't stop the nails growing, doesn't stop the heartbeat, still decides to invest his life energy in that person to the very end. The human took the life away, no doubt. So whenever a person is living, whether they are morally good or bad, God, I don't suppose, is a bad investor and continues investing. But those who worship me with devotion, see, worship can be of many kinds, but with devotion, that means with a loving heart, with a non-demanding love, that is. They are in me and I also am in them. There's an emergence, there's a nearness becomes oneness. They are my very own. They're in me, I'm in them, and we can feel that. This mystic union is there. That's what makes a great holy person, a great saint. But you don't have to say, a saint is up here, I'm here, when will I get there? Not that attitude. Because God is here, God is now, God is love. And Sri Ramakrishna says, as long as I take God's name, if God's name is alive in me, then what sin can touch me? What impurity can there be in the mind when God's presence in the form of his name is there with me? Thinking about God, how can there be any impurity in the mind? So sunlight falls equally on all things, good and bad, but in effect, its effect and utilization vary according to the nature of those things. The very presence of the sun is seen in a mirror because of its fitness to be reflected. And though the all-pervading Lord is in the hearts of everyone and all, his presence is patent only in the pure hearts of the devotee. That's the meaning. So as one gives oneself to God, one gets purified and God's presence in that one becomes evident. And Sri Ramakrishna says this, God is in all beings. All beings are not necessary in God. And that is the cause of their suffering. We need to be established in God. And established means, you see, if you go for a swim, dipping your toes in is not swimming. getting in the water and vigorously splashing. It depends how good a swimmer you are. So frantically paddling with arms and legs and so on and so forth, or swimming in a systematic way. But just experimentally dipping the toes in and out, dipping into God when we choose and out when we don't want. When we're in trouble, dipping in. And when things are going wide, going out. This bhakti is great. This bhakti is easy. This is what we're being told. And this is the age where we require something easy, something simple, something that is appealing, and that is why it is widely recommended. So the greatness of bhakti is now being expounded. Api chet sudora charo bhajate mam ananyabhak sadhur eva sa mantavyaha samyag vyavasito hi saha. Even if a man of the most sinful conduct of worships me, the Lord, with undeviating devotion, see, undeviating devotion, that means the sin was in the past. He must be reckoned as righteous, for he has rightly resolved. So all religions begin from that stance, see, the stance of recanting or, taking stock, and then not dwelling too much on it, but saying this life is not really worthy of me. I can do better. Let me resolve to change this second, and the second after, and second after. No good changing this second and the next second is different. And so I think at some point we told the story of Vishwamangala and how he managed to reform. Even with the Ramayana we find it there, that Valmiki was started off as a robber, perhaps robber murderer, and was persuaded to reform since he realized that there was no practicality in it. Nobody would share in the moral result of his actions. Those who are near and dear, all they were concerned about was, well, how we get food on the table, not how you did it. That's your business. It's up to you. We won't share in any sin of yours. And so he makes a resolution. It's this samkalpa, this resolution, that is the first step. And we spoke a little bit, maybe a few weeks ago, about difficulties in the constancy of spiritual practice or meditation. The first thing I said was, well, there has to be initially a will about it. There has to be a resolve to do it. There has to be a reason why I'm doing it, and then there has to be a resolve that I will do it and continue. It is this resolve that puts people on the top of Mount Everest. It is this resolve that makes people take up a cause, either for themselves or for others, and pursue it, requiring desire, dedication, and determination. All of these factors are necessary. So, the dirtiest water can be brought back to its original pure state through distillation. If you have muddy water in these modern days, you put aluminium sulfate in, and it acts as a flocculant and gathers together all the large particles, and because of its heaviness, it sinks to the bottom and clarifies the water. Sri Adi Shankaracharya mentions something similar. A flocculant is necessary to purify the mind. In his Viveka Shuddhamani, he mentions this. So, doesn't matter what condition you are, you're dealing with a mind that can be purified, has that possibility of being purified. But it requires resolve. And then even that person who conducts worship with the preceding criteria, that is sincerity of mind, purity of heart, sincerity of intention, all of these things, and it's mentioned undeviating devotion. Can we worship all the time? Can we do puja all the time? No, that's not what is meant. It's the mental attitude which is worshipful. Seeing and feeling God's presence all the time, that presence occupying the mind at every given moment with a sense of wonder and thankfulness and adoration, that can be cultivated by anybody. How to wean people from worldliness, says Sri Ramakrishna, to godliness. Thought the twin saints, there's no question, thought the twin saints Nityananda and Gauranga, and they struck up upon the plan of preaching that the chanting of the Lord's name would bring into them more of wealth and earthly enjoyments. Because that's often how people are persuaded a little bit to pursue some kind of different direction. Give yourself a reward. Those people, followers of Muhammad, were promised a paradise. If you fight for what we think is right, then you'll get a paradise constructed around all the things that people missed. In a desert, you want an oasis. You want water. You want things to eat. You want date palms. You want perfumes. You want all the things that you can't ordinarily get in a desert. You transport them into paradise and say, and give people a free offer, like a holiday, like a prize. And although that may be misleading with regard to the ultimate end, it encourages people at least to start, since we are inherently, seemingly egocentric. We want something for ourselves. We can test it out. Supposing we say, the first one in the door next Tuesday will get a prize of a holiday to where it is. We won't say it's a holiday to Iran or Iraq or something. We give some other destination. You see, then I wonder, will there be queues outside the door? Should we experiment? Of course, we need somebody to donate that ticket first. If you offer people some incentive, if you say, we're giving a seminar tomorrow on how to grow rich beyond your wildest dreams, I can assure you, we'll not ask for society subscriptions, advertising. We'll have to hire a big hall somewhere, and even then it'll be full to capacity, no doubt. So there are well-known speakers who offer this, and it becomes attractive, not knowing that these things will bind you, and they will not bring you the promised happiness. So, to start with, give some incentive, some heaven, some hell, some personal benefit. You'll be happier, you'll be more peaceful, that kind of thing. So chanting the names, Lord's name, you'll get earthly enjoyments, and it's not false, you will get it. Even unasked, you'll get it. Attracted by the offer, people in large numbers joined the saints in singing and chanting the glory of God. The divine ecstasy that emanated from that holy act made people forget all vulgar pleasures and turn their minds more Godward. Because how long will you keep repeating God's name until some love is stoked up and evoked, and then comes to the fore, and then saturates all the other things. All the other things seem very paltry, very mean in comparison. The value has gone completely down. We were discussing something like this a little earlier, you see. In the context, we gave the example of alcoholism and drinking and so on and so forth. See Ramakrishna's unusual approach to somebody who drinks alcohol a lot and may have a problem with it. Unusually, he didn't say, with a moral finger coming out, parental finger, no, stop it, don't drink, resolve today never to drink. He said, please continue. Only one thing, when you drink, offer this alcohol to the Divine Mother. Sooner or later, what will happen? The bliss of the Divine Mother, the intoxication that will result, the divine intoxication that will result, will far outweigh and far eclipse the small thing of the alcohol, when you may be happy for a moment, but get something called a headache on the next day. See, when you engage in this, you don't think about the headache the following day. That's the thing. Oh, you see people holding their heads, maybe in Temple Bar or someplace. What happened? Oh, I was enjoying myself. I see. And now? You regret? Oh yes. Next night, same thing. And so the divine ecstasy that emanated from that holy act made people forget all vulgar pleasures. He puts them ranked lower and turn their minds more Godward. God is the divine talisman for all worldly evils. Then the question can come, how long does the convert take to reach Godhood? Because people ask very often the question, when will I know when there is progress in my spiritual life? When will be this turning point? And so this question, similar question is asked, how long does the convert take to reach Godhood? The commentator asks, and the answer comes. Kshipram bhavati dharmatma shashva chantim igachati kunteya prati janti na me bhaktaha pranasyati. The answer is straight away, kshipam, soon. Soon does he become a person of righteousness, that is, inherently good, automatically good, without striving to be good, automatically good, and obtains lasting peace, not just here and there. Know for certain that my devotee never perishes. You can contrast that to some theologies. You say, this threat of perishing, this threat of, you see earlier, I preserve, says Sri Krishna. I preserve what you already have. You don't go back. It's not like snakes and ladders we said last week. You don't go up a ladder and then just by chance come down by a snake and then the whole thing goes on again. Not like that. I preserve and I also add. I move one step and the Lord moves 100 toward me. That's the grace that the Lord perpetually radiates. So many a sinner has, within the span of a single lifetime after conversion, changed into the divine, and we find so many examples of this. Some Christian examples were given previously here by St. Teresa, St. Augustine, and so on. Augustine famous for saying, yes, I want to change my life, but not just yet. I'm having a good time now. We'll postpone it to later, a more convenient time. Of course, if we all do that, by old age, we may have developed Alzheimer's and forgot what our resolution was. So, the oldest case known to us is that of the sage Valmiki, which we mentioned. An illustrious recent convert, of course, Girish Chandra Ghosh is mentioned. How he was inherently good, as most people are, and yet went astray, having a hard life, there's no doubt about it, but resorted, as many people do, to the superficial pleasures of life, and changed quickly from profligacy to purity through the contact of this pure soul, Sri Ramakrishna. The Pandava brothers themselves bear testimony to the fact that the devotees of the Lord never get lost, because all the five of them had unflinching devotion to Sri Krishna. They lost their whole empire. They were exposed to many dangers. Untold trials and tribulations came upon them. The life of long exile in the forest was painful, and those who don't know should study the story of the Mahabharata to get the context. But they didn't falter in their faith in God. That's the key. Adversity, in fact, only increased their love of the Lord. They were blessed in the end with the stress, the best in life. And the great biblical example of that, if you're a Christian or a Jew, would be this whole episode of Job. There's a phrase, having the patience of Job. So in the end, they were blessed with a blessed life, with a perfect life, or the best life, called stress. The case of the mediocre should now be taken up. Now, there's a very important passage here. Mam hi partha vyapashritya ye pi shu papayona yaha striyo vaishas tata sudras tepi yanti param gatim. That's very, very clever. Why clever? For those who take refuge in me, that means take shelter. The world seems to be attacking us or we have to struggle, something like that. Where can we take refuge? We can take refuge, of course, in the senses, but that formula is not working for us. Girish Chandra Ghosh and others discovered this. So, you take refuge in that Supreme. If you had to say, where will I take shelter, where will I be a refugee, then if you apply to the President of the country, he may grant you the status. But if you ask a minor officer, he'll say, oh, please put in your pre-visa requisite things and put a case in and so on and so forth. So you go to the highest authority, no doubt. Upartha, that is somebody who is a male member of a clan, if you like. Though they may be of inferior birth or seen to be of inferior birth. That is, and the next thing is women. Having made reference to men, women. Men and women have this opportunity. Vaishyas have this opportunity. That is, normal people dealing with commerce and industry, in our modern language, people earning a living, the majority of people who are householders, trying to keep the household going, keep a family going. So Vaishyas, and Vaishyas are classified though in the social structure too. And also within the social structure are the Shudras, those who are the unskilled labor doing the job. Anybody, this illustrates by making an example of different aspects in the social strata, we find the point that anybody who takes refuge in God, anybody who takes shelter at this point, what will happen? They, even they, regardless of your social status, regardless of your conditions, regardless of whether you are of inferior birth or struggling in the social dimension of life, they attain this supreme goal. You can't say because you're this or that you're more entitled than the other person to this supreme goal. Imperfect birth is quite common in nature. It may be found that in all species, of course, the feminine body is less perfect and less majestic than the masculine. And Sri Shankaracharya is often criticized for saying, what fortunate thing you have to have a male body. But the fact is, if you take stock throughout the world, it is the female, by and large, on average, in countries like Africa, Asia, and so on and so forth, is the female, actually, that is the more disadvantaged. In Africa, particularly, you find it's the female that does all the work. And then what does the male do? He looks after the cattle a little bit, gives that to his sons, and then goes and relaxes in the sunshine. So there is every reason to highlight this. So in the human, the mind is more important than the physique, actually. So women as a class are less developed in mind than men, through exceptions, though exceptions may be found, is here in this commentary. So I'm not putting my name to this. So classification of Vaishyas and Sudras and so on are not fully developed in mind. That's the idea. Even those people who are not highly intellectual or who are not necessarily sophisticated or educated, this makes no difference. They all have the equal opportunity. So even mediocre people are competent to reach Godhead or Godhood. No human being is debarred from this birthright. It is your inherent birthright. O children of your mortality is an expression that is put out in the Shvetashvatara Upanishad. I have seen that great one, so it goes on like that. So we are children of immortality. This is our inheritance. And Jesus also makes reference to this. It is through parables, it is your inheritance. You're entitled to it. So Sri Ramakrishna says this. When there is a hurricane, it is not possible to distinguish one tree from another. Similarly, when there is the hurricane of bhakti in the mind, distinctions such as sex or gender, caste, color and race vanish of their own accord. When a tsunami comes, it doesn't say, wait, let me highlight those people who I want to. It affects everybody. Now that's so with the normal people. What about those who are born naturally in a privileged position? What about those who are, for example, in this case, the holy Brahmanas? That is, the holy Brahmins, the holy priests, those who are not only born in a privileged way, but you see it says holy, because some Brahmins, some priests, some clergy in every religion are not necessarily holy. They have that position, and yet it's what's going on in the mind. And then devoted royal saints is mentioned, not just royalty who have the power. Both of these have the capacity to manipulate power, and so we have to qualify them with adjectives. Kim puna brahmana punya bhakta rajarasayastata anityam asukham lokam imam prapya bhajasvatam. So, that is punyam, as in contrast with papam, already mentioned, of course. So what is a Brahmana? Is one who is perfect in mind and completely given over to spiritual life. That is one who knows Brahman, the Supreme. And then, of course, next in ranking order, in the social structure that the context he's talking about, a Kshatriya, military person. I should explain. We explained previously, but it is worth going over again. See, all society, if it's to run smoothly, has to have these four dimensions. You have to have dedicated people, teachers and people who are not necessarily earning a living, but selflessly dedicated toward the upliftment of society in the modern context, such as nurses, doctors, teachers. Then what about, and of course, those people who are dedicated to ritualistic activity on behalf of others. And then, because of their nature, somebody has to protect them. So you have to have the administrators. You can say the civil service and somebody in charge, the administrators. Otherwise society doesn't run properly. The vast majority will be the people engaged in commerce and industry. Shopkeepers, people who are dedicated to corporations in the modern language. Those are the vast majority of the workforce. And then there has to be a provision somewhere for unskilled labor. Unless you have these four dimensions, society does not run smoothly. So when people ask me in a critical way, oh, the Hindus, you have this terrible caste system, I point out there's nothing wrong and absolutely everything right with the caste system, as it should be in this context. But hereditary caste, that's something different. But in this context, these four dimensions are necessary in society. So even those people will automatically be, so we expect it, but we don't necessarily expect it of the more mediocre people or people born not in these privileged circumstances or having these naturally good tendencies, pure tendencies. So it illustrates that everybody has access to this. So what is sought as a fragrant and fresh flower today is cast aside as rubbish tomorrow. This is the case with everything in the world. Its transitoriness is self-evident. Misery is the counterpart of every earthly joy. Sorrow is ingrained in happiness. The highly evolved souls, the discerning ones, should therefore take to the worship of this Ishvara, so that they may transcend this relative existence. And I'm going to continue to the end because we may review it a little bit next week, but we're one stanza away from the end. So Sri Ramakrishna makes this comment, how shall we attain the Lord is the question. Can you with a distressed heart pray to Him for His grace and revelation? You shed pots full of tears for the sake of your wife, children and property. Have you ever shed a drop of tears seeking the Lord? As long as the baby is interested in toys, the mother minds her own business. But when the baby throws away those things and screams, the mother rushes to attend on it. You behave likewise toward God, and He will reveal Himself to you. Now, there's no difference in principle between the child and the adult. They just have different toys. The man has golf clubs, and the child has trucks, toy trucks. That's it. The child these days may have video games, and therein there's no difference, because it looks like the adults also have video games. But these are all distractions. These are all playing with things which will take our attention away, and they will not give relief to our suffering. Minor entertainments, minor deviations, but combined and compounded, overall will not lead us there. It is only when we lose interest in these things, and sometimes this will happen naturally. We lose the interest in these things, and we start being more mature, and we start understanding and realizing much, much greater joy when we resort to blissful base. That religion calls God. Then finally, how to pray to God is made clear, and this is a theme that is repeated endlessly, therefore very important. And it goes like this. Manmana bhava mad bhakto madhyaji mam namaskuru mam evayasyasi yuktvai tvam atmanam madparayanaha. Fix your mind on me. Be devoted to me. Sacrifice unto me. Bow down to me. Having thus made yourself steadfast in me, taking me as the supreme goal, you will come to me, and we'll explore a little bit more about this when we commence our 10th chapter next week. We finish it off with the standard chant at the end, Iti Srimad Bhagavad Gita Supanishatsu Brahma Vidyayam Yoga Shastri Shri Krishna Arjuna Samvade Raja Vidya Raja Guhya Yugo Mam Navamo Dhyaya. In the Upanishad of the Bhagavad Gita, Brahman of knowledge, the knowledge of Brahman, the supreme science of yoga, and the dialogue between Sri Krishna and Arjuna. This is the 9th discourse, designated yoga of the sovereign science and sovereign secret. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti.